And we're live. Hi, this is Michael Finicaro from the AI Across the Product Lifecycle podcast. And I have the pleasure to be with Davy Demeyer of Acceleer and Markus Guerster of MontBlancAI, two exciting companies transforming process industries today with AI. So Davy, can you tell us a little about yourself and a little about Acceleer?
Yeah, hello, Michael. So I've been working for more than 20 years in system integration, industrial automation, mostly focused on process industries, so food, pharma, chemicals. And I started in Belgium 20 years ago. I'm from Belgium, but I quickly did the projects abroad. And because of that, also very early, I ended up in China. So in 2006, I already started doing projects in China. And then in 2012, actually, I moved permanently to Shanghai to build a team there from scratch around automation and industrial software and MES. And for the past 12 years, I served the multinational companies building greenfields in China with our team. Again, food, pharma, and chemicals. And then 2 years ago, I decided to leave my employer because I got a little bit frustrated with how the entire engineering product lifecycle is, especially for industrial automation, because I thought it was so manual. So I left both my employer and I also left China. I came back to Belgium to start my own company, which is a startup, and it's called Acceleer. So and that's what I'm doing today.
Exciting. Thank you, Davy. How about you, Markus? What's your story?
Yeah, hi, Michael. Nice to be here. So my story is really, I'm originally from Germany. And when I was 15 or 16, I was working in a dairy. I was doing kind of all the mundane works that you basically do there if you don't have much of education. Didn't think much about it. Went on to kind of study the classical engineering, sort of software development, education. Also studied basically machine learning and AI before it really became a hype in a way. Worked on a few things there. Similar to Davy, also went to industry, worked for company, and also very similar, like 3 years ago, kind of got a little bit tired, and then went into starting MontBlancAI with a couple of colleagues, really with the idea to bring machine learning and advanced analytics into the process industry. And funny enough, at that time, I was visiting the dairy again that I did my internship when I was 15. And surprise, not much has changed in terms of data, dashboarding, and so on. So yeah, super curious, and I think we're gonna touch on a few of those points today as well.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, and it's interesting too because mostly I talk to people from discrete industries, right? The classic CAD simulation. So thank you very much because it's so interesting to hear about the side with formulation and materials and just a whole different set of concerns. And of course the processes themselves, which are interesting. So let's back up for a moment and look back at like 2022, 2023 when ChatGPT 3 came out, and I had never even heard of ChatGPT 1 or 2, and it was like, holy cow, what is this all about? What's going to happen? Markus, were you like super motivated? You were like, yeah, this is the future, let's go, or you were a bit standoffish, let's see what it does, it's probably a lot of hype? What were you? Were you bullish or skeptical back then?
I was skeptical, to be honest, because AI is nothing new, right? It exists since the 70s. It's been there like pretty much forever. It has found a lot of applications as well in sort of the statistics, machine learning side, deep neural networks, etc. All of things were on the coming, but they were always thought to be unreliable. Nobody really understands them. That was really before like that launch that you said, right? That was kind of the thinking in the science community. It's all just, who knows what's going on, which is still true today. But then with the launch, it actually well, it doesn't really matter. You don't need to understand what's going on. It provides so much value. And I think when the first time I tried it, my skepticism completely went away because I could see what it can do, right? And then I think the numbers just explained themselves. The curve was crazy in terms of adoption.
We've never seen anything like that before. Davy, did you have a similar feeling?
Yeah, but I was very quickly convinced. So the moment it was released, I played continuously with it to push it as far as possible. And then I also told my team at that time, so my automation engineers and my software engineers, you have to use it because, especially in automation, it's often difficult to find the documentation and how to do things. So I quickly saw the potential, even though it was still not so easy. But I noticed it's mainly from my team. Then it was mainly the software engineers who were able to use it. For the automation, there was more skepticism in my team, and it was still difficult for them to use it. But I was convinced. I was already thinking, okay, and this is just the start, because for me it was very clear this was just a point in a trend. And so I was already thinking, okay, what is now the next step going to be, because they will be able to improve this. And I listened very carefully to the podcasts about people talking about it. So and it was the right moment, because it was a bit still a bit before, but around that time that I started thinking about building my own company. So it also gave it was also something I could talk to and reason through things. So I was very convinced from the start, and since then I really pushed to use it as much as possible.
Oh, that's a great segue into the second question, which is more on how AI is changing the way we develop software. I mean, you guys both are founding a big software company, software startups. I mean, I think the low-hanging fruit is probably product requirements documents. I mean, those seem to be completely delegated to AI these days, or that's what I'm hearing. How are your developers using AI on a daily basis? How is it transformed? Is it, for instance, has it changed the way you do agile or waterfall? Has that come into question? I mean, I would just like to understand how the transformations in terms of software development. So either of you can pick that one up. I don't know if you want to start again, Markus, or Davy, you can do it.
I can, yeah. So actually, I think that the way we use it mostly, Davy, as you said, like if you're starting a company, right, you have so many hats. So you use it as a sounding board, as an advisor, it's kind of all kind of the other things. But in terms of development for the software itself, I think it also has evolved quite a lot. In the beginning, it was really quite narrow, right? You had to be, send a bug there. Sort of debugging was kind of quite helpful, but not really writing full pieces of code. That's how we used it quite a lot. It quickly got into like the architecture pieces of how you actually design software and like the bigger picture, because then you broke it down and then you could work with AI again to figure out the smaller pieces. And I think over probably the last weeks or months, I think with the whole agentic approach that seems to be much more reliable, like Codex or Claude or whatever you use, we certainly moved more into really delegating things to AI completely and let it write the code itself. It needs to be very thoughtful, right? We always think about it. It's a new engineer that you bring on. So you have to tell it how to do it, what are our guidelines, what are our standards, etc. It works, I think, extremely well. The technology is maturing very, very quickly. One of the challenges that we're running into is that the context windows of the models exceeds the context windows of us as a human. So what I mean by this, very quickly, the AI writes whole gigantic features
right.
that in the end, nobody's able to actually digest and review and check again. Like they're always working. It's amazing. It never actually introduces any bugs, or very rarely, But the problem is, how do you maintain such a code base going forward when you write gigantic things very, very quickly? So I think this is kind of the challenges that we are facing right now. But of course, as a AI company that sells AI, we also use it internally, and we have followed the technology. And to my surprise, I was skeptical in the beginning a little bit when ChatGPT came out, also when agents came out, that hype around there. But I think it actually always exceeds my expectations on how mature it's becoming.
Is that your experience too, Davy?
Yeah, so I also started it using quite early for coding. So if you, for the people who use this from the start, you know, we started with copying pasting. You just had a ChatGPT window, you add some code,
and visual code,
you copy paste it in your IDE, because we had nothing like Cursor or Copilot. And then I think one of the first ones was then Cursor. You actually had to download a copy of Visual Studio Code. They copied Visual Studio Code, but they adjusted it. And then I started using that, and that was a lot of code completion. So you could prompt, and it completed things, and they have a special graphical user interface to help it make you easy. For a brief moment, I used Augment. They had an amazing context, so they were super fast to understand the complex code base. And then Claude Code was released, and that was amazing. So Claude Code is it's basically they said, yeah, you should or you can program in the CLI. For me at that moment, it was crazy. How can you program in the CLI? You don't have a nice overview. But then also around that moment, it clicked for me, because the key point in agentic coding, so not vibe coding, but agentic coding, is is Git, and Git becomes a tool, becomes a basic a basic tool to keep your agentic coding under control. So you have around that moment, I figured out, okay, you need to start from a clean commit. You ask the agent what to do, and then you review in Git. You don't necessarily have to have everything integrated like Cursor. And so that's at the start of Claude Code, which is now around 1 year ago, that they came with this principle. And then from there I experimented with a lot of different approaches, elaborate PRDs. But I stopped with this, because I think it's a little bit like what Markus says. We have a problem with our own context window. These agents can write so much code already 1 year ago. You could not keep up if you write big PRDs. So actually, I went back to small features. Try to give individual features, try them, test them. Of course, Acceleer is a very new application. There's nothing on the market that's similar. So, and it's at the intersection of software and automation engineering, which is something I believe will change a lot. But it also requires a lot of experimentation in the user and developer experience. So for the automation engineers, and so it's not something you can just say to the agent, now build me huge features. Because you need to also have a tight feedback loop with the people who are using it. And so I came back. I came back to do more smaller features, but at a much higher velocity. So if teams ask new features, often the day after they have the features ready, tested, and the testing is also very important. What I also saw, so these agents can build their own unit tests. So if you give them a feature, you can say, you can tell them do test-driven development. First make a failing test, then implement the code, and then test your own tests. And at a certain moment, the amount of tests in the code base went exponential, because it's becoming so easy for agents to also add the testing. You cannot trust them. You have to check, are they actually testing, not taking bypasses? At a certain moment, that was an issue. But actually today I have a very lean, very agile workflow that's also very trustable, because everything goes through Git, everything is reviewed, everything is tested. And so it's at a point where it's reliable, very high speed. And now the limitation, I think, is because every time you have to start from a clean context. So every time the agent forgets what it has done before. And so I think if they can solve this, that the agents have long-term memory, then it will be crazy.
Right. I played around with that a bit with anti-gravity and now with GSD inside of Cloud Code. I don't know if you guys have messed with that, but it gives you a bit more memory and a bit more ways of structuring. But just another question on the development side, has Agentic or has AI and Agentic AI changed the philosophy of the way multiple programmers work together? Because already you're a team between you and the AI, right? But what about the other humans and the other developers? Has it changed the way you have implemented Agile with the other developers, or it's still the same thing? You just have everybody has this other pal next to him that comes to the Scrum meeting, and he's just called, Davy's agent and Markus's agent. Either of you can pick that up, or neither of you, whatever.
We can swap the order now, Davy, if you want.
Well, it's that's also requires quite some effort to think about how you collaborate. So one of the latest things that we like to do now is to put, for example, to extract the chat with the agent and store it in the repo as a commit. So basically, when you go back, when people make commits, you can actually look back at what has actually led to, which conversation has led to this change in the code. I'm still not convinced if it's the right way, but that's, for example, one of the experiments that's happening now. Some people say, yeah, that's a good approach. Some people say, no, you should actually not put this in your Git repo. But it has some advantages because you have like your entire reasoning workflow between the human and the agent stored in a certain commit. So if you later look back,
but sort of like the design intent in CAD, you're just making sure it gets written down, right?
Yeah, so you automatically have the reasoning behind it, and these agents are also very proficient with Git. So actually, if you have a new session with the agent, you can tell them, "Oh, we changed something in the past, and I have no idea why it has been changed." So then you have the code changes and you have the intent together, no matter who collaborated with the agent. So still it's not so easy because also people adjust at a different speed to the agents. It's also changing so fast. Some people have different preferences for how to do things. So it's bringing a lot of impact, and I think we're just at the start of seeing how teams are collaborating with it.
Do you have anything to add, Markus?
I think it raises quite an interesting dilemma because the direction where everything is going is certainly towards your centralized knowledge base to some degree. You centralized memory, right? Michael, you said it. Long-term memory. Davey also mentioned it, right? You put it into the Git commit to have some sort of trace history of what's going on. And the memory exchange pipeline of agents is going to be a million times better than the communication between people. So I expect in the future that everybody has the little agents, right? And the agents communicate with each other. And this is where the majority of information flows. Like, yes, I implemented it. The other developer implemented it like this. This is the pattern we are using. And that whole thing between the agents that every developer is using, it's going to be outpacing by many, many numbers what people are interacting with, because that's a lot of the actual development flow that we have today, right? We jump on the dailies, we have all the demos, the retrospective, we have all those patterns to make sure that developers are communicating and exchanging information. Now, if this is all kind of replaced a little bit by this gigantic pipeline, I think it's restructuring the whole flow a little bit.
So like what I was saying earlier, I think it's changing Agile. Maybe you're going to have a Scrum with just agents at some point. No human involved.
That
could happen, right?
Probably the direction that things are going.
So if you look at engineering, like in process industry, the most extreme of one of the most extreme things is pharmaceutical engineering, where you really have the V model, and you have no choice. It is waterfall, because you have to start from the design
because of
and
the
then everything.
regulatory compliance, right?
Yes,
because of the traceability.
And so it makes it a very wide,
rigid,
a very long engineering timeline. But I think what agentic engineering will allow, not only agentic engineering, basically digitizing the entire engineering workflow, is we will be able to do this. We will be able to bring the execution, the development very much closer to the definition. And so we will crush by just making the whole loop much, much tighter. And so it will be waterfall, but so fast that it's almost agile.
Wow, that's a good one. I like that. That sort of nicely leads into the next subject, which is when we're using Acceleer or MontBlancAI, where are we using AI in the application? Is it part of something that the user sees when they log in and they're using it? Or is it part of the plumbing because you're using AL or some advanced algorithms on the bottom? Where are the touch points? And maybe part of that, you can mention, one of the things we've sort of talked about is the fact that AI is probabilistic. And I think that in the process industries, you need something that's deterministic, right? You need to be very sure of the exact quantity of this chemical at this temperature, at this pressure, mixed with this. I mean, all that stuff has to be extremely precise. Otherwise, you get garbage at the end, right? You don't get the thing you're looking for. So how does it work in terms of your products?
I can start. I think we're using it on a variety of different layers. I think the most important thing, and we're not talking about AI here, it's you have to have the foundation right? And the I think very much overlooked thing in the process industry, and probably not a piece of manufacturing, is as well, everybody's saying, yeah, we don't have data. But that's incorrect. There is data, it's just not accessible, right? It's lying on the PLCs.
It's locked up in the silos, right?
It's lying there. And it's probably the highest quality data there is in this world, because PLCs, they are 100% correct, or 90.999% correct. So it's just a matter of getting that ground together first, because that addresses your point, Michael, where you said, yeah, AI needs to be grounded, right? And this is the grounding. So you have the data foundation, and then what we do in our product is first to have a very deterministic, or mostly deterministic statistics layer on top of this, a machine learning layer, right, that crunches that huge volumes of data, because you cannot feed that directly into an LLM. So that crunches the data that is very deterministic, and that allows the agent then to interact and do analysis with either the process data or with other documents. So the way this shows up to the user is, first of all, of course, the co-pilot view, right, that you have all the time, like in pretty much any product, or coming into almost any product. But we also have it running on the background and constantly generating those nudges, right? The things that keep you becoming better. Are your processes running correctly? Is any machine about to fail? Like, has to be any major changes? Is there any kind of new documentation that you need to be aware of? Maybe we send you a piece of information every week or so, right? All of sort of those background things are very, very heavily driven by our agents.
Thank you. That's a really good answer. Thanks, Markus. Davy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so your question was partly about the deterministic nature that we need in industry. So Acceleer is an application that generates...
And also how...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So Acceleer is an application that generates the code for the PLC, which is, of course, very, very critical. And Acceleer at the core doesn't use AI to generate this code. So it's deterministic code generation. And so we actually take the existing workflow where people had to make functional descriptions, and then they program by hand. So we transform this so people can automatically generate the code from the functional descriptions. And so actually, instead of, for the users, instead of letting the AI help with the code generation, because we have this for a big part solved, we actually allow people to use AI to generate the functional descriptions. So actually the design intent. So which is much more easy for people to collaborate with. A coding, asking the agent to code is very, very tough. You have to review what the agent is doing. You really need to take care of the entire workflow, especially if it's a critical application. But if you ask the agents to collaborate on the design, it's much easier. It's less taxing for your mind, because you can just read in human language what the design intent is. And so you can ask the agent, you can ask the agent to generate it in a very human readable format. And that's what Acceleer is doing, defining this human readable format a bit as a standard. And then the engineers can decide themselves if they do totally by hand or if they start using the agent. And so how we implement it, we actually allow people to just sync the entire design in textual format in Markdown files, let the agents collaborate with them, and then sync back to the platform. So you can just use Claude Code or Gemini or Codex or whatever. So you just bring your own agents.
Thanks. There's actually a really good audience today. We've got around between 16 and 20 people. That's just great. Thank you, everybody that's out there. My friend Brian Carroll, who will be on my podcast at 5 o'clock today on change management, has a question. He said that since there wasn't really a formal response about adding team members, how can any initiative work across the manufacturing lines with all the IoT and edge server data being connected and ingested into AI? So, I mean, how do you take this generic idea and then ensure that each of the lines that you're managing with the software is consistent?
Yeah, I think that's what goes back to the fundamental things that you have to sort out before you even sort of work on the AI part. The way we approach it is really having a long list of connectors available, right? That connect to all your variety of different IoT devices, PLCs, sensors, SQL databases, CSV files, because the landscape is heterogeneous. Like nobody always has just one single one. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here and discussing this. Right. So that's the first step that has to be sorted out. The nice thing, though, about having an agentic AI within our product is that you don't need to be perfect in sort of schema alignment, because the AI agent is going to be able to figure it out. If things are slightly renamed, right? If you call it temperature in one space and the other one it's called temp, and the other one you misspelled it and called temperatur or whatever it is, right? Like the agent knows, okay, probably they meant exactly the same. So let me just connect all of those three pieces together. In the historical way, without having any sort of agentic AI behind it, that would be a nightmare, right? Because you have to change all of the schemas. Now, God forbid somebody renames it, then you have to change the whole thing again. Yeah. Probably remigrate data and like the whole drama. It's a never-ending story, and this is exactly why currently process manufacturers, it's all over the place. Exactly because nobody wants to have that effort to standardize everything, which is a never-ending effort anyways.
Awesome. Davy, anything to add?
Yes, so Acceleer is not trying to solve that part of the workflow, so having the agents in production. But what these agents need, they need a lot of context. So of course they have the real-time information, the IoT data. And I remember at the previous question I said that we allow agentic engineering based on the functional design specifications, so the agents can engineer them. But at the end of the engineering phase, we also allow to extract everything, again, in Markdown files in a kind of structured format, Markdown, CSVs. And that's actually the design of the plant, the automation design of the plant. But the automation design basically says how the plant has to run. And so then you can pull this in AI Copilot, and you give it together with all the IoT data. And then the agent really understands everything. It sees the sensors, even like Markus said, even if they are not perfectly labeled, it's very good at making this cross-reference. And if then you give proper documentation, like what is coming from the design intent, then it becomes really, really powerful. And that's the focus of Acceleer on the output side. So we don't really want to make the agents for the production, but we want to provide the context as a very strong basis.
And do you guys think that thanks to Acceleer and MontBlancAI that maybe process industries will catch up or surpass discrete in terms of being modern?
That's our goal, Davy, I think. Right?
Yeah. I call my company Acceleer to accelerate process industry.
The digital transformation.
I think process industry has a lot of opportunities, but the mindset is really behind. So if you look at the automation layer, so you know the PLCs, but in process industry we have the DCS systems, so distributed control systems, and they are very closed. PLCs are relatively open, and we are very far from, for example, just the engineering, the DCS engineering. With PLCs, certain PLC systems, you can already do agentic engineering. DCS systems today, it's almost impossible. And so the entire mindset in process industry, it has to change, and it really has to accelerate. So if you, for example, look at pharmaceutical manufacturing, the plants, the entire engineering of the plant, it's way too slow from the moment that people have research in medicine to the moment that they can bring it to production to the market. It's too slow. We saw it during COVID, and people said, okay, we need to take shortcuts to bring the vaccines to the market. But it's the same for every medicine. And now we are back to this wide V waterfall project workflow, and this has to speed up. So the mindset really has to change, and AI can help with this, but a big bottleneck is the people that need to say, okay, we really want to move forward.
I think you're catching up there. Your connection dropped off for a second. Let's talk for a minute then about now that you guys we've all lived through these first 3-4 years of the AI revolution, we call it that, and now we've had this insane Claudebot Moltbook thing, whatever that was. Where do you guys stand on? I mean, you guys both started out relatively skeptical, and then rather convinced, and now 4 years later into the hype cycle, where do you sit now in 2026? What do you think about where we're going, and what do you think is going to be the next breakthrough? Davey, you start this time.
I didn't try the Claudebot. I understand what it's doing. I think it could be interesting, but I don't see an immediate application for what I'm doing, because everything needs to be so well under control. And of course, Claudebot is the opposite of control at this moment. But I do believe that we're gonna go to a situation where this will become good enough to basically use it as real assistants that are always available, that can do big parts of the jobs, of the tasks. That's also what I said at the start of the talk. If the long-term memory can be solved, and you combine it with something like how Claude works today, that will transform everything. And then actually the focus of people will shift from actually doing the boring tasks to really steering the agents, to really say, okay, we need to build this, and we need to work towards this, and let these agents maybe work for 1 day or 2 days, and then let them come back to you to discuss the next step.
I just wonder if there's a danger that we're all going to get so lazy that we won't even think about it. We're just going to be delegating. I mean, already, every time it says, would you like me to do this? And and you're like, okay, fine. But wait a second, where did I start with this question? Sorry, Markus, how do you want to, what do you think about it, the way we're going and where it's going to land after a year or so?
Yeah, I think the direction is quite clear, right? Definitely replacing tasks and automating. I think the increasing efficiency overall. I think the direction is very, very clear. The thing that I'm thinking that's more like bigger picture, right, outside of what Davy and me and Michael we're doing in sort of the manufacturing space. But how are they actually? What are the the numbers? How do they work out for those big model providers, and where's that direction going? Because the commoditization of those models can go also in the wrong direction. If suddenly we have, like it's been happening to Facebook and Instagram and all social platforms, if they're throwing ads, that would destroy everything. Because suddenly I cannot use ChatGPT to brainstorm anymore because it's not neutral.
And it's not objective.
Opinion, but now I know it's actively steering me into a certain direction to buy a certain product. That would be a nightmare. Right? If it goes into that direction, that will destroy everything, I think. But of course, then they also have to earn the money. So the question really becomes, where does the compute cost go? Like how much does it go down? How much more efficient do the models become? And in the end, does it really pay off to replace a person or a person's hour with an agent? Because there has to be a significant cost benefit in the end, right? And it's a factor of 2 is not enough. It has to be a factor of 10 or 100 or something like this to really adopt. And I'm very uncertain where this cost benefit ratio is going to sit, because right now the market is obviously distorted, right? Everybody's just throwing out the models and investing billions and trillions into everything that they can possibly get to get market share. But where do we end up once all of this kind of investment cycle, everything is done? So that's kind of the bigger, larger question that I have in mind that drives the SFE of the things that the coming years will bring.
Well, you pick up an interesting point with the upcoming advertising and the OpenAI stuff, and of course, he also had that insane comment about adult content in there, which is mind-blowingly stupid. Won't that push us to be developing our own models when it becomes economically feasible? Like, could you envision there being a large, operation, a large OT model, a large process model, so that you don't have that dependency anymore? Or maybe there's a split. There's a model which is just, here's all this OT data and about process industries, and then here's how a language works. I don't know. I'm just trying to, because at one point if it goes that direction, if Anthropic, despite their ads in the Super Bowl saying, making fun of OpenAI, if everybody goes that direction, we're going to go back to LM Studio and Olama and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, some of the bigger models do exactly.
Sorry, Markus, you want to finish your thought and then Davy can jump in?
Some of the bigger models do exactly this, right? They split themselves into experts models. So that could be a feasible approach that suddenly you can deploy it yourself, or at least lower the cost to run a model yourself. That would, of course, distort some of those things. Yeah, but sorry, Davy.
Go ahead, Davy.
Yeah, but so if certain companies start with advertisements, then other companies will not do advertisement and just ask you to pay and not to have the adverts. And it's very tough to have the leading models, but you can see open source is so near to the closed models. Okay, they are a couple of months behind, but these models are so powerful. So it's not so difficult to, even if the closed models would go this direction, then open source would become even more attractive. And on your question, will we have specialized OT models? Well, I hear sometimes Siemens is talking about this, but the thing is, the moment that a model becomes openly available and has certain specific data inside, then the other models distill it. So they basically query the model, they extract all the information, they put it in their data set, and they also put it in what's in their own model. So these models are so hungry for data, and now people are really looking around for very specialized data. It's very difficult to make a model that has certain amount of knowledge that the other models don't have, unless if you keep the model totally closed. And you could do this if you have a fully proprietary data set and you only use it internally. But the moment that you make it available to the market, it's going to be very difficult to protect this. I don't think for OT we will. I think it will be very difficult to not have the leading models to take a big part of the knowledge. And you can already see it today. If you query ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini about really technical industrial topics, they know a lot of things. And it's going to be very difficult to keep up, even for a company like Siemens to build a specialized model. They can maybe lead for a couple of months, and then they will be catched up.
So just before we switch gears and talk about digital maturity, which is a really interesting topic, particularly in process industries, in the demographics of the people watching this podcast, I do have some younger kind of entry career people. And I'm wondering, you guys both have a lot of field experience. Maybe some of the people listening are chemical engineers or electrical engineers that are interested in that area. What kinds of things should they be working on, getting experience on, so that AI doesn't take their job, that anxiety everybody has? You guys have any, another 30 seconds or less, do you have any tips for them on what they need to look at or focus on?
But they need to, first of all, they need to go out in the field. It's industry, you need to understand factories. If you're young, really get out there as soon as possible. Spend time, especially doable when you're young, because it's more difficult when you have the family. So really get this experience. It's really, really important. And then for the mindset, really have a mindset that you want to build things. You don't want to do these tasks. You don't care about individual tasks. You care about the results. And AI is just a tool that will become more and more powerful. So you have to learn the tools. You have to learn AI. You have to use it. And over time, you will see you will just be able to do bigger and more complex things with this. Don't ignore it. You have to use it.
Markus?
Yeah, I think my take on this would be invest in relationships with people. I think that's the one thing that AI will hopefully never take away. And invest in skills over knowledge. Because I think learning something by heart, I mean, once Google came up, it was already kind of, the value of that went lower. And now with AI, it's even lower than this, right? So really invest in your skills, in your thinking, in how you approach problems, in how you break them down, in how you handle complexity, and sort of those patterns more over knowledge. And I think that's the more future-proof.
Thank you. I like that one a lot. That's the first one. Nobody's come up with that one. That's a good one. So let's talk a bit before we close about digital maturity. I always think of digital maturity on a scale of 1 to 5. Like 1 is we're still using Excel for everything, and we exchange by email, and it's super slow, and it's very, very serial. And the other one would be fully agentic digital twins. My factory runs itself, and it's all fully adaptive. Nobody's at that point, particularly not in process industries, for all the reasons that, especially Davy, you mentioned. So when you guys go to customers and especially in these industries, are they closer to 3, closer to 2, underneath 1? I mean, where in general do you feel that your customers sit on that spectrum?
Well, I like customers to come to me. That's also why I post so much on LinkedIn. So on average, they're already a bit further along the curve. So probably they already experimented to realize it's difficult. So for me, on average, I would say maybe 3, because what I do notice is almost a very it's minority who already realizes what AI can do, what agents can do. And I also don't see the management opening the possibility to use these agents. And these agents are expensive. They are $100, $200 US dollars or euros per month. It's not super expensive, but you need to make the budget available for the people, encourage them, tell them, look, the budget is there, just use it. On average, it's especially in the automation world, in the industrial automation world, it's single-digit percentage of the people who are using it, and almost every automation engineer can benefit this. So this should actually be more than 90%, and be less than 10% of people who are using it today.
Thank you, Davy. Markus?
Yeah, it's also to me sometimes quite shocking how little people have ever used actually ChatGPT. They maybe tried it once when it came out, but then it just disappeared. They're not having as part of their daily workflow. And I think Davy, when Michael, we're talking here about it's our daily tool. Like if it's down, we stop working basically, right? Like it's so elemental to what we are doing. It's hard to think away that sometimes it's just shocking to see that somebody actually doesn't use it, where you see like such a clear use case to save half of their day easily with just having ChatGPT open. So that's sometimes a bit shocking to me. I don't know exactly the reasons for this. It's just, I think, it's becoming clear that the gap is also widening and widening. Unfortunately, when AI and ChatGPT came out, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? Because it tries to close the gap a little bit, right? Like everybody has a much stronger tool. But it doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be that innovative people adopt the tool, and it's exponentially growing that gap larger and larger and larger. So yes, I would say, Michael, to your answer, I would see more on like the one on average, probably. There are some outliers. There's some outliers who, as I mentioned, that then you get this exponential thing, right? If you have someone on the C-level who is a super fan from this, he pushes it through, people realize it, then you get like this snowball effect. And then the whole organization is kind of on fire around this topic. But once you never get that starting point, you're kind of at a one, and you're not moving much around the one. You're just scared, right? You're scared sitting in the one, unfortunately. And nobody has the, I guess, just the desire to change, to get to a two. I think that's something also what's driving a lot of the things, right? It's too comfortable. It's more complaining than there's not enough pressure that people need to get from a 1 to 2. That's sometimes my impression as well.
So, but when people start using MontBlancAI or they're implementing Acceleer, is there not a sort of a aha moment or an epiphany or a sort of maybe a slow ripple effect that they start seeing the benefits and they realize data governance, breaking data silos, data exchange, collaboration between teams, that all these things are contribute to more efficiencies, more higher quality, less breakdowns. Are you seeing that already? Is it something that is very concrete and that we could say if you use AI startups and not just the stuff you've been using for 30 years, you can see these kind of improvements much faster?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it has this snowball effect. That's why I think the scale is not, you don't have the normal distribution. You have a lot sitting at the 1, and the ones that are sitting at the 4, they're getting very quickly to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? That's kind of the snowball effect. But I think for some people, it seems like an impossible jump to get from 1 to 4, which I think is a completely wrong mindset, because Davy, your product, I know yours, ours, like the adoption, the initial barrier is so low. Like it's crazy low, but I think there's just so much brand marked from like past projects, from big ERP implementations, from big MES implementations, from other big projects, that if they hear another software, they think of years and months instead of, okay, one day, there you go. And then you get into that snowball effect.
Yeah, I think the barrier it's not so low because it is a bit higher. I notice people sometimes don't know how to get started because there's so much information. Like now, everybody's talking about CloudBot, but that's not what you should do. You should take a serious agent So if people scroll their social media or they check on YouTube, it's actually, the advice is too complex. You should actually just take one of the common coding agents and get started with this. Doesn't matter if it's Copilot or Codex or Claude. So what I notice is because the initial step does take a click. They need to click, and then once they are over this, then suddenly it keeps going. And how to get over this? Of course, you need to have the mindset, but it can help to have somebody that knows how to do it. Find who already knows how to do these things. Sit together for half hour, for 1 hour, and that already helps a lot.
Yeah, I guess finding the champion in the organization that actually understands it is massively important. So how do you guys have tips on how do you find that guy? You're looking on LinkedIn, I mean, maybe they're not easy to find, or maybe they are.
For companies in their organization, well, if you're a manager, you should know your people. You should know who's the guy who.
No, I'm saying for your customers, how do you find the champion
so that's why I post every day on LinkedIn. I just let them come to me.
Smart. How about you, Markus? Same?
Yeah, the champion, I think, is easy to find. That's not the biggest challenge. I think helping the champion to convince internally to get that jump, that little jump of confidence, that has been the kind of larger challenge, I would say.
And how in both of your cases, because we still have a few more minutes, I would like to ask, like, how so I think another concern is people think, oh, well, it's like either or. Like if I go in with this AI stuff, I have to sunset all the legacy, and that's going to be super expensive, and I'm going to lose stuff. How do you guys cohabit with the legacy stuff that is going to stick around for a while?
Well, there's two things. So actually, for Acceleer, you don't need to sunset. Acceleer builds around legacy.
Okay.
But the problem is AI. If you bring in AI, a lot of, like in PLC and especially DCS, the major packages today cannot deal with AI. And the main reason is because they lock all the code inside their own applications. So AI requires you to have open access to your data, to your data or your code. And if you don't give this to the AI, or you give it, but in a very difficult way, that still requires a lot of manual steps or slow APIs, it doesn't work. So in industrial automation, if people want to use AI, they need to switch to the next generation, the latest generation of development environments. And Siemens has this, Beckos have this, Codesys has this. I know Rockwell is working on something, but you need to start preparing to switch. Unfortunately, in industry, it has an impact.
You have that same input, Markus?
I think we're a different product. So we certainly started from the beginning on to make sure we just connect to legacy. Like even if it's 20 years old, because that equipment is 20 years old, and why would you change it if it's running? Dave, you're talking about this development environment, it's different, but the hardware aspect, we're kind of not touching. So we work with legacy actually very, very well. And we're also not replacing any software legacy systems. It's really just setting something on top of that maybe replaces your paper and Excel spreadsheets around and Power BI and your 20 different screens that you pull up in your 8 a.m. meeting in the morning to see how everything is running. Those are the things that we're kind of replacing or renewing, but not the rest of kind of the legacy systems.
Yeah, actually, for me, the biggest competitor to Acceleer is Excel.
Yeah, of course. So it's the same in the PLM world. It's Excel as the competition, exactly. So how do we get past it? How do we defeat Excel? How do we make, I guess it's around the user experience. It's about the ease of use. It's about accessibility too, that it's not hard to get to the tool, right?
Yeah. Make the onboarding as easy as possible. Focus on the development experience.
Well, it's been a fantastic talk. I've had a great time talking to you guys. Thank you, Markus and Davy. So other than, of course, the Threaded conference in Warwick on the 25th of March, or the Threaded conference in Miami on the 13th of April, where can folks come and meet you in 2026?
Yeah, for me, it's LinkedIn.
Okay. No conferences?
Nothing planned. Nothing planned in the near future. I'm based in Brussels. If people live in the neighborhood, always welcome. But yeah, most people I meet are through LinkedIn. It's very efficient. And of course,
you,
SASE. Of course, you have the SASE Slack. So there's a Slack community of the automation engineers who talk about the conversions of software and automation. So it's SASE. It's a Slack where we discuss about where everything is going. So yeah, come join this. If you're an automation engineer and you want to discuss about the future, come join the Slack.
How about you, Markus?
Very similar. We're probably going to be at one conference in the IFT FIRST in Chicago, but mostly also LinkedIn. It's certainly the easiest way to get in touch. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll drag you guys to one of my Threaded events in the future. It's been great. I certainly learned a lot about process industries and the transformation. I think you guys are doing an amazing job. Thank you to the audience. We had a really good audience for this one, so that was awesome. Please feel free after the call to post your questions on LinkedIn, and if you wait a couple of days, I'll have the polished version of this up on YouTube. So with that, thank you very much, and I'll be back Thursday with another episode more in the simulation space. But it's been great. Thank you very much, Davy and Markus.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Stop.